Mary Will I Die by Sean Sarles, Chapter 4. This is Alina's point of view. Remember, she's the one that had everybody look in the mirror from the beginning. The water ran warm from the faucet, pooling in Alina's cupped hands. She splashed it against her face, lightly massaging her skin with her fingertips. The water droplets tickled as they slid off her nose. She dipped her hands back into the sink and repeated the ritual, carefully patting her face dry with a fluffy towel. She studied her reflection in the mirror, her cheeks clean and pink from the face wash, her skin unblemished. She reached into the vanity cabinet and pulled out a jar of moisturizer. A dab on her forehead, a streak down her nose. She smeared it across each cheekbone and then left a dot on her chin. She began rubbing it all in, the cream cooling her skin, keeping it smooth, keeping it beautiful. Her phone suddenly dinged on the counter, and Alina's eyes flickered to it. She saw the text message, but ignored it, turning back to gaze at her reflection instead. Page 34. She tilted her head this way and that, puckering her lips and sucking in her cheeks, trying to catch the light until, there. Her hands floated up, fingertips trailing lightly over her skin. She locked eyes with her reflection, getting lost in the image, the way her whole face seemed to glow. She looked radiant, irresistible, like she was an angel, or Aphrodite herself. A smile blossomed on Alina's lips, right as her phone chimed again. But this time, even though something whispered in her ear to keep staring, she was able to pull away from the mirror. She looked down at her phone and tapped on the screen. She figured it was a message from one of her girlfriends, or maybe Henry. But as Alina slid the message open, she was surprised to see that it was from a number she didn't know. "Hi, beautiful." Alina stared at the message, wondering who had sent it. Was it serious or just some stupid dare? She had a boyfriend. Whoever this was had to know that. She wasn't in the market for a new one. She and Henry were coming up on their anniversary. 3 years together. Oh, there's Anne and year. She'd had a crush on him ever since she was 9 years old. And in the 6th grade, when they'd finally started going out, she'd known that they'd be together forever. She'd known that they were soulmates. Alina's finger hovered over the message to delete it, but page 35. But the screen flickered suddenly at an onslaught of messages, and an onslaught of messages came pouring in. Rows after rows after rows, a string of them filling her screen. A giggle bubbled out of Alina, and she clapped her hand over her mouth, surprised at the odd fluttering in her stomach. I'm inferring that she's kind of liking it, like she's just like, oh, somebody likes me? I already said that. A giggle bubbled. Oh, I already said that, sorry. She scrolled down, counting the emojis until she got to 12. It was a sweet gesture, even if it was a bit creepy. But it was also flattering and mysterious. Alina waited a few beats before giving in. Who is this? She held her breath, her bottom lip caught between her mouth. An admirer. Alina snorted. She knew better than to fall for that. And not a weirdo, I promise. She rolled her eyes and slid her phone into her pajama pocket. She knew these types of guys, and they were definitely weirdos. Some nerd on the math team or in the marching band. She would kill whichever of her friends had given her number out to some loser. As Alina made her way down the hallway to her room, page 36. She thought about Henry, her boyfriend and soulmate. She'd had a crush on him for as long as she could remember, ever since Her eyes flitted to the closed door at the end of the hall, and it was like a hook had snagged in her heart, reeling her in. A soft music filled her ears and beckoned her forward. Beckon means like calling you forward. She passed by her room and kept going, sleepwalking as she turned the knob and opened the door to her grandmother's old room. She passed by her room and kept going, sleepwalking as she turned the knob and opened the door. I didn't know she was sleepwalking. I'm kind of questioning that part of it. She moved to the middle of the room, leaving the door open so that light filtered from the hallway. She couldn't remember the last time she'd been in here, but so little had changed. Had it really been 5 years since the grandmother had passed away? She walked over to the dresser and rifled through the trinkets there. She picked through a couple of bracelets and a pair of earrings, but none of it was anything she'd want to wear now. It was all so old, the silver tarnished and the gems cloudy. And that wasn't all. Her hand cut through the stack of books and pulled out a thicker tome. Tome is like a book. A volume of fairy tales. Carefully, Alina brushed the dust off the cover and opened the book. The spine cracked as she flipped through it, and Alina remembered how her grandmother used to read to her. She didn't remember the stories. Though, and she only half recognized the illustrations. She squinted and tried to make out the words, but she quickly realized that they weren't written in English. Her grandmother must have translated as she read, or known the stories by heart. Alina kept turning the pages, and then an illustration made her stop. Page 37. A beautiful woman stood in front of a mirror, but her reflection hid something monstrous, a demon with glowing eyes and bloody lips. Something about that image tugged at the back of Alina's mind. She looked closely at the page and tried to make out the title of this particular story. Die Verflucht Frau. Of course, she didn't know what the German meant, but she could look it up. As she reached into her pocket to take out her phone, a chill crept up her neck. Goosebumps scattered along the backs of her arms, and a strange draft gusted through the room, grabbing the pages of the book and turning them so that the woman and the mirror disappeared from sight. Don't you have more important things to do? Alina looked over her shoulder. There'd been someone standing there behind her. She could have sworn, but it was only her reflection. Her face bashed in the pale her face bathed in the pale moonlight streaming in through the window. Come and take a closer look. Something beckoned to Alina, and she forgot about the fairy tale book. She took a few steps until she was standing right in front of the antique mirror, with its lacquered wood and inset pearls. And in the light, she noticed a silvery swirl running all the way around the oval glass. A filigree of symbols. I would put that on my vocab sheet. I don't know filigree. A filigree of symbols that could have been the constellations in the night sky. Look at how beautiful you are. Page 38. Alina's eyes snapped up to her moonlit features. Her skin soft and pale. Her eyes were clear and gray, bottomless. A face like that deserves the world. Alina nodded, wholly entranced by her reflection, the way the glass rippled as if she could step right through it into another world. Deserves everything she wants. In the mirror, Alina saw herself reaching into her pajama pocket, saw herself pulling out her phone, smiling as she read a new message. She blinked and looked down, surprised to find her phone there in her hands. The screen pulsed in her palm, and she saw that her admirer had sent her more messages. "You don't have to be creeped out. I would talk to you at school, but I don't want to make Henry jealous. Does he ever tell you how beautiful you are? Does he ever buy you flowers or chocolates? Does he know how lucky he is to be with you? Are you still there, Alina?" Page 39. As Alina stared at the screen, she couldn't keep the grin off her face. This feeling of being wanted, it was powerful. It was intoxicating. Should she write back, just to learn who he was? She liked the attention. She liked the compliments, and Henry would never find out. Alina looked at the mirror, studying her reflection one last time, those words echoing in her head. "You deserve the world." And she did. "I'm still awake." She looked at her message for a second and then hit send, turning her back on the mirror as she made her way out of the room. She shut the door behind her, so wrapped up in thinking about her secret admirer's identity that she failed to notice that someone was watching her. Something. Its face pressed right up to the mirror, staring out at her retreating back, a wicked smile, curling its bloody lips.